What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Scratch Agency Podcast, hosted by Scratch Agents for Scratch Agents. This episode is brought to you by Virtual Intelligence, your premier partner for client-facing and back-office virtual employees. My name is Stephen Turnbull, founder of T5 Insurance Services in Clinton, New York, and I'm joined by my co-host today, the one and only, you already know, hold your applause, Mr. Sean Fitzgerald, founder of Sound Harbor Insurance in Long Island, New York. Mr. Fitz, how are we doing today?
Good.
On that coffee?
Sipping on that coffee, getting ready for this conversation. Team's rocking and rolling. I'm good to go, man. What do you got going on?
We're jumping right into it. Super excited to have this guest on. We've been talking a ton in the community. We've never met or have a conversation before like this. Yeah. So I'm going to be learning everything for the first time and just super excited to have him on. Jason Armogida. Did I do it right? Armogida.
You did.
Okay,
yeah, that's
perfect.
good.
Little worried about that one. Owner of 360 Insurance Solutions. Jason, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Of course. Thanks for having me. Doing good, guys. How are you?
I'll give myself like a B+ on that.
You left out the D on there.
Yeah, that's okay.
That's all right. That's
Sean
all right.
just poaches all the hard work onto me. No, we're
It's
doing
been
good.
butchered worse.
Listen, I'm super excited. We're recording this a week before our meetup, and I know you're going to be there, so I'm looking forward to talking a little bit here, but then getting to know you more in person and our mastermind meetup that we're having there in DC. Lucky for you, it's only an hour and a half away, so I'm a little jealous of that, but that's okay. But listen, just thankful to have you be on the show. Thankful for your involvement in the community and all that. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive into some topics.
Yeah, sure. The community's been great. I'll say I've been in the industry for right at 20 years now. And the first half of that, I was a little resistant to networking with other agents because I'm like, oh, they're all my competition. And this is really before the internet made it everybody much closer. So to have community, to have support, to have peers and people to talk to, like-minded, we're all facing similar struggles. We're all facing the same kind of hurdles. So having that community has been incredible. So the last year and a half or so that I've been in it. So I appreciate that. Yeah, my story. So I started, like most, without a plan to become an insurance agent. And then I fell into the industry. I was looking to get into finance when I was 20 years old, right before my 21st birthday. And I happened to meet a State Farm agent. Like many, I started in the captive world. And that agent wanted to train somebody from the ground up. And my interest was really in finance. So I went to work for him as a financial services rep at State Farm, selling primarily life insurance, annuities, some investment accounts and things like that that were done long before the pandemic, or not the pandemic, but the world collapsed in 2008 and the financial collapse of the U.S. So went through a couple of years with him, cut my teeth with a little bit of property and casualty. And then as things started to go south in the financial world, got a little stronger in the P&C side of things, and then eventually just kind of lost my job because things were at a standstill. I lived in Denver at the time, got out of it, moved to Virginia, and went to work for another State Farm agent back at that time. And I spent a couple years there in a really hot market, just slinging homeowners insurance for new home buyers in a coastal region where we were killing the market. And I was like, sure, I'm in college now, just taking some classes. I'll make a couple bucks, do this for a couple years and move on. And a few years into it, I decided this is really kind of where I'm probably going to spend my life. So I may as well stop working for somebody and start building my own book, start to grow a little bit and have something on here because I've gotten as far as I'm going to. I was #1 producer of this agent. Today now, 15 years later, he's very high ranked within State Farm in Virginia. But I knew working at State Farm, I wanted to serve my clients better. So I knew captive wasn't the route for me, started looking into the independent side of things, and ultimately decided to go with independent. But I opened as a location of another agency, which was under a company that we all love, Erie Insurance. Worked with them for a long time with the intent of buying that agency out. Relocated to Richmond, worked with them for a couple of years and kind of put my book aside. And ultimately in 2022, decided that wasn't the route I was going to go, spun off of them, and here we are at 360 Insurance.
I got a lot to dive in there.
It's 20 years and 30 seconds. How about that?
One thing I want to bring up that we talked about in the past, and I had a guy that listened to the show that called me maybe 2 weeks ago, and he was in the health space, and he was saying he wanted to go P&C and Star Zone Scratch and all this, and it was down south. It was a different market than me, so obviously I can only give him so much advice, but I told him, like, look at the captive space and see if you can cut your teeth with getting the experience. And we've heard a lot. I know Sean came from that. I did not. We've heard a lot of people that go captive, CSR producer at captive, and then decide that they want to own their own agency and transition to that, and say that that experience in that captive was so great because of the training and the resources. Talk to us about your time at the captive, and or maybe those who are listening that are looking to get into the space, thinking that it's going to be as easy as just opening, a door and having all these carrier appointments come to you. And if you can transition in that answer, talk to us about your journey from becoming a producer to an agency owner.
Sure. So I can't say that I had the experience of having excellent support and training as a staff member at a State Farm agency. I did quickly learn that nobody's going to teach you how to do this job. They'll put you through some basic training on what insurance policy looks like, but nobody teaches you the sales side of it. Second part of that is you don't really want to learn sales from an insurance carrier. You want to learn sales from a sales organization. So I didn't really feel a ton of support in that sense, but what I did feel and what made it simple is the simplicity of their systems. As you guys know, as independent agencies, we have systems all over the place, and the opportunities and the possibilities are unlimited. And when you're with a captive company, you're forced to see down this road, and that makes learning it so much easier. So we had an AMS system that just kind of did everything that we needed it to. We didn't even have CRMs back then. This is in 2005, 6, 7, 8. So CRMs didn't exist until the last couple of years. So it didn't have all of those kind of hurdles to deal with. But as far as learning and figuring it out, it was mostly on my own. And I learned that lesson really quick of, if you're going to get good at this, if you're going to actually do this and provide value to people, you got to take it upon yourself to learn. So I started diving into policy language early on. I was conducting a lot of reviews with clients as a account manager and producer. And most of those I learned kind of on the fly of going through language and the questions that they ask, how to read a policy, how to understand what it says, how to ask the right questions and dive into it further. And nobody really taught me that. And I wish they had, because it took me a lot longer to learn.
Well, there's a balance in that too. I know, Sean, you have something here, but just real quick before we move on from that, I think there's a balance in that of like being trained, like, this is how we do it here. This is everything. This is what you need to know. Like we talk about all the time. There's no way you're going to know everything by 1 month of training, 2 months training, whatever. And I think it's a balance of, do I know everything versus just start having the conversations and figure it out along the way, because there's so many different situations. There's so many different carriers we work with, different ways they work, all of that like jumping into the fire to a certain extent is the best way to just get rolling.
Yeah, and I think Jason made a really good point, like about specifically like, and this was the same for me. It's like the lack of sales support specifically. Like the knowledge and how to use the systems and how to service the client, all that stuff, and the carrier appetite and all that. Like, yes, they do an amazing job at doing that. Even, I don't know if your experience was the same, Jason, but even like when I was at Nationwide, like all the agents would get together. All the local Nationwide guys would get together once a month, and we would all just talk shop to each other in the room and see what's working, what's not working. And I found that to be super helpful. But what I will say, it makes me that like just like brought me back to like, I remember when I first started, it was like, all right, take out, just pull up a resource, work friends and family. Once you get through your friends and family, you'll start getting some referrals. Then you could do some cold calls if you want. But that was like the plan. So to your point, I think it is super important, like especially for those agents out there that want to scale their agency. It's really important to have like, if you're bringing on a producer, have a plan of how they're going to obtain and generate new business.
Yeah, and I think that's huge. I was very lucky in those early days in that I worked for agents that generated the business for us.
Yeah.
In fact, when I got to Virginia Beach, I'd say that was the most impactful space there. And that was the agent had some fantastic relationships that just brought a ton in.
Gotcha.
And that allowed me to kind of plus one from those relationships to form my own relationships. And when I went into business for myself, then I had relationships then. So I never had to hit the friends and family piece real hard, because it was coming in from professional alliances. And that was kind of important to me. I always felt like, and I still to this day, I don't like hounding my friends for business. I don't want to ask them for the business.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's up to me to let them know what I do, and I'm very present, and everyone around me knows what I do for a living and how I help them, but let them come to me with it. Or, we hear the
Yeah, I
opportunity,
agree.
they're buying a house. Hey, who's helping you with that? I can help you now when it's an obvious opportunity. But
Mhm.
I've been very privileged in that I never had to hop into full-on production mindset of hitting that friends and family. And I've always had a passive mentality about it and have just been a resource. And I'll say that, years into it, I'm the agent for most of my friends and family.
Yeah.
And
It's
they're
cool.
the
It just
most
happens.
problematic clients, so we'll just leave that there.
And they're the most problematic. I learned one lesson from my friends and family, and that's do not get off the system.
Yeah.
Because every time you're like, oh, I don't need to go through these steps, then it bites you.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
stay on the system.
Can we talk about the simplicity of systems? I love that you brought that up. And
Yeah.
there's a balance with that as well, because we've talked a lot about this buzzword AI that some of us may know of, and just all these crazy tools. Every day we're getting a newsletter for this new AI tool, or this can now integrate with this, and this now can integrate with that. And we've said this enough times in the podcast, but I think it warrants saying it again, of simple, keeping your system simple, to the fact, and Sean brings up a good point all the time, of does your current system do this, or will it be doing this? And I want to talk about it from a scaling standpoint, to your point, Jason, that you kind of brought up, maybe unintentionally, of like scaling the agency and bringing people on. The ease of learning the systems with 5 that work really well together versus 15 where maybe you
Yeah.
don't need 5 of them, right? And I think that's a
Yeah.
big shiny object thing that's going on right in the industry now, and especially for new scratch agents with low budgets, low experience, whatever. It's something to be cautious of.
Yeah, and I think the three of us started our agencies very close in time to each other and really in the boom of InsureTech. And I bet if I know, Stephen, you have some history in your family's practice before. Sean, it sounds like you have some experience in it prior to that also. I'm sure we all were complaining about the technology just lacks, it lacks, it lacks. But since 2022, when we all started this, the InsureTech world has blown up and it's just been chasing squirrels. This over here, that over there, and you can consume your entire work week just trying to figure out what systems you want to add to it. But when you get the right ones, you get the right ones working together, and you make it simple to just do the job. I've had to stop myself from going down those rabbit holes many times and just say, okay, does it make you do the job better? Does it make you better at what you do? Does it work together, or are we just chasing a dream here? So that's something that is incredibly difficult to limit yourself on because, like you said, new shiny object, you can go running after that. Um, Today I
Yeah.
run
Oh, sorry. Go
no,
ahead,
go ahead.
Jason.
Go ahead, Sean.
No. You go. You go. I wrote it down.
Yeah, today I run a couple of basic things. I'm still exploring alternatives, looking at getting our voice over IP system more uh, more cooperative with our other systems and just trying to get things to work better together instead of trying to add new things in.
I like that.
So that's kind of where we are on it too.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you hit the nail on the head, ending it off. I think that's everything. And Jason, you're the one that uses Kara, right?
So I started to.
Okay.
I put it on hold for the time being because we're
Okay.
just not using it enough to yield that expense.
Gotcha.
If I had a few users on it, great, but there's only 3 of us here, and
Yeah.
really I was the only one using it, and it's just not worth it for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to bridge off that real quick, because you touched on like knowing what each piece of tech you have like does, right? And I think it was in the community, someone mentioned something, because I know there's a few people that use that AI tech, and someone mentioned about being able to do like accords and this other stuff. And I was like, I was like reading through some of it, and I'm like, man, I could probably like use that. I started getting the shiny object syndrome late at night, and I'm like, I could probably
Yeah.
use that. And then I think it was Sierra that jumped in and was like, oh, we use Wonderwrite for our supplemental apps, and you can actually do like the accord forms within Wonderwrite. And I have Wonderwrite. So I was like, oh, wait, crap, I can just add the accord aspect to it within the system I already have, so I don't got to add another system.
Yeah.
So it amazes me, like, and I've done this practice now where, and T5, I know you do this too. I literally have a Google sheet and I list out all my tech, and
Smart.
like I look it over like once a week now. I just look it over and just make sure, all right, is there anything on there I'm like not using in the last like 3 months and get rid of it, or is there anything I'm using on here but not to the max capability? And
Yeah.
Wonderite was one of those things. So if you haven't done that, I would say that's like a good, for anybody listening, I would say that's a good practice to write out all your tech. Have you used it in the last couple of months? I did that. I saw like I had Adobe and I had some like I had like two separate subscriptions within Adobe. I'm like, oh my God, how long have I been wasting $60 a month, So
Right.
it is something
No, I
I'd
think that's
recommend
a
doing.
great idea. Yeah, I just jotted that down to do. I think that's a great idea because you could forget some of the things that you have if they're just, you check it off on the list of bills each month, but beyond that, don't think of it. So
Yeah.
smart thinking.
So let's dive into 360. Tell us the story of the agency, what you guys are like today. Let's go through those early days. Tell us about how it's been, what you guys focus on, all that.
Sure. The early days is really before 360 and uh, lived and breathed on its own. Was back working underneath that Erie agent. So we kind of started in 2014 and we had a DBA as 360 underneath this other agency as a remote location to it in Virginia Beach. The mothership being here in Richmond. It was a pretty cool setup. It was good. Like I hopped into it and we were rocking and rolling. I was writing about 40 to 50K a month in personal lines insurance, all off of home buyers. And we got some referrals from, because I had so many relationships within State Farm, we got a lot of referrals from them when they, Sean, you've experienced coastal insurance and the carriers just lock up from time to time. They'll pop back in for a little while, they'll lock up. And we capitalized off of a lot of relationships that way early on too. So we were rocking and rolling those first 5 years in Virginia Beach and really built a solid book. And then uh, shifted that mentality to then move up to Richmond, start to work with the agency that was here, learn more about it, and to contemplate buying them out. So I really took my sight off of growth and more into learning them, into learning more commercial at that point in time too. So that was in 2018. Learning a lot more about commercial because I wanted to get out of the homeowner's grind and really just have my staff handle all that stuff. So 2018 moved up to Richmond, was working in the agency here for that agency, learned a lot about it, learned a lot about commercial. They were incredibly supportive in getting through that process. And the pandemic changed everything. So we started, it was quiet for the first couple months of the pandemic. And then in 2021, we started to pick back up again and really started to put my efforts back into sales of my agency, or I should say my book at that time. Fast forward 6 or 8 months, we started talking terms on buying that agency, and I just felt like it wasn't the right move for me. Something didn't feel good. I knew that I would lose a lot of those relationships that were big revenue generators for that agency as soon as the owner was out of the mix, and it just wasn't a gamble I was comfortable taking on. It was about a 12 or $14 million book of business that I was looking at. So, that's a big debt, a big debt, and you got to be real comfortable with it to go into something like that. So 2022, in the matter of about 6 months, we made a shift out of that agency. We kind of knew, we saw the writing on the wall that the market was hardening up, but didn't know that it was going to be the extent that it was going to be. So as we made the move, got security with you can call it a cluster, you can call it a lot of things, but an agency that essentially allows you access to markets, all the big guys, Travelers, Progressive, and all those sort of things, and put together the agency under that with a quick move. And I dropped Erie in that time because Erie, in order to sign me on my own, wanted exclusivity. And well, I already had half of my book not with Erie, had half of it with Erie. I can just transfer my preferred business to another agent or to another company and do a book roll there. So we split off from Erie, which is the thing that was probably the hardest to do because I knew Erie so well. They're a fantastic company. I still to this day think that they're a great option for people, but there's lots of great options out there. The hard part there was when we went on our own feet, bought the agency owner's interest out of it, had all of our things moved over that was not Erie, and then we had to do the book roll with Erie. But competition wasn't so good because the market started hardening up by the end of 2022. So we really didn't start on that book roll until November of 22. And by then, I mean, things were just really slowing down. So we ended up losing about half of that Erie book, and it was best interest of the client to stay there. I still talk to a lot of them this day, and we look at moving them over slowly still 3 years later now. So shrunk a little bit in that move, but it was still a great move. It's good to be on our own and call the shots and be able to build the plan on our own.
Can you talk to us and dive in a little deeper on like the established remote location that you had in that transition to your own agency? That seems very unique. Was that just a principal that had a good relationship that was willing to help you kind of get started, or what did that kind of look like?
Yeah, at first the intent was really to help me get started. And of course, he was going to make some money for doing that. It wasn't initially supposed to be a long-term thing. We were really looking at a 2-year time frame where I'd build a book, buy his interest out, get my Erie appointment outside of his agency, and then go on to grow my own agency. Uh, as we got further into it, we got along really well. We had similar mindsets. We had similar ways of doing things and how we wanted to work with others. So that's when we, I guess about start of year 2, decided that, okay, let's look at this a little longer term and maybe consider making that move of, he was looking for a succession plan, and I was looking for some growth. So we started pursuing that really about the 2-year mark, with the 5-year plan of getting to Richmond and being physically here. So it was a unique situation. It didn't start
Yeah.
out that way, but that's where it landed. I would say that if I could go back and do it all over again, I probably would have taken the out much earlier, because I built a pretty good sized book of business that I had to buy his interest out of. That was
Sure.
expensive.
Yeah. So fast forward. So you just hit 3 years. Tell us about the team workup and what that looks like in the process to how you got there. You said it was 3 of you, I think.
Yeah, so 3 of us, an account manager, me, and a virtual assistant. So I'm including the VA in that. So the account manager I actually just let go a month and a half ago, maybe early June. Uh, that's been a challenge, but she was with me for 9 years. Fantastic employee, loved working with her. She's like family. But at the end of the day, she was kind of tired of doing what we're doing here. And you all know that being an account manager, most people make it 3 to 4 years, not 10. So we just parted ways, and now we're kind of in a figure out where we're going with that, which is why I'm talking to another agency about helping out with our personal lines. So currently it's just me and my VA. So I'm back in the seat doing all of it again. Prior to making that move, the goal was to get really out of personal lines focus and get strictly to commercial growth, but maintaining our personal lines book of business and just keeping the business that's coming in as a result of that. We just couldn't, she wasn't a salesperson, and I needed that kind of salesperson mentality to continue to nurture the personal line side for me to focus on the commercial. So we made that call and kind of started still replanning it at this point. So still figuring out what the direction is going to be. But again, the goal here is to get into the commercial world.
Yeah, I think people underestimate, and I totally did, how difficult it is to scale an agency from scratch if you're doing both personal and commercial. And I say that because, just from growing pains that I've gone through, is like the way you onboard somebody, the way you set up the training for them the first couple of weeks, the way you prospect, the way you service commercial versus personal, the appetite guides, the carrier access, like could not be more different than each other, and that makes it really challenging. to know like, oh, do I got to hire a commercial person first, a personal person first? Should I do a producer? Should I do an account rep for personal versus commercial? Like it makes it pretty tough to figure out what makes the most sense for your agency, but then to actually scale it and have that training built out for each specific quote unquote department, you know?
Yeah, and even more than that, Sean, it's finding the talent. Finding the talent is difficult. It's hard to do. And I at one point I had an account, the same account manager and a producer. And I was wholly focused on commercial at that time. Uh, the producer wasn't really in it to be a producer, so that didn't last long, right? Finding the right people. Again, you can date for a little while before you get married to somebody, but if you find out that they're not the right one, you don't get married. So
Yeah.
cutting those ties costs a lot of money. So finding the right talent to do that, like you said, you can't do it all yourself. So you've got to have the right support. You've got to have the right backup. They've got to be the right mentality. All the things have to make sense to do that. And a lot of agents talk about selling their personal lines book to go into commercial. I know you guys just interviewed another guy, Cody Hauk, that did that exactly. And he and I have talked several times before. I've contemplated it, but at the end of the day, it's still a nice little nest egg. I hate to drop the personal side, especially because I have such good relationships with our clientele.
Yeah.
So
We got
it's
to
a hard
wrap this.
strategy to figure out.
We got to
Yeah.
wrap it up in a minute, but one thing I want to hit on before we do is talk to us about your VA and how you're utilizing them. So 3 years in, personal and commercial, and I think there's a unique spin of you had an account manager, you no longer have the account manager. You're looking at what that next step's going to be now, but now being in limbo mode, like, is there more that you put on? I guess I'm curious, is there more that you put on the VA that you didn't in the past that you realize they can do better? And maybe you should have had them do X, Y, and Z all along. Like, what's that process been? Just talk to us about how you're utilizing them and your experience.
Yeah, I've given my VA a little bit of whiplash, and he always asks for more. It's kind of entertaining. We started him out in running quotes for us and helping with our renewal pipeline and the renewal tasks that we had, checking for payments and just correspondence with clients on that. We use Agency Zoom, so he was managing a lot of the things within that. Then we shifted him over to commercial to support me on just completing supplemental apps and Accord apps and all those fun things and just staying organized there. And right as he was getting up to speed there was when we got rid of the account manager. So he's back to square one and now doing both. So on a daily basis, he's checking the carrier websites for any notifications. He's handling our certificate request. He's handling our mortgagee document request, running our quotes and just kind of prepping everything so that I can go over the notes, look over it, make sure everything's good, and then propose to the client. Helps with some binding of policies with just the documents afterwards and getting them out for electronic signatures and things like that. I would say that he's doing a ton of admin stuff that's all over the place, both personal and commercial now, and it's been incredible. But he's been with me a year and a half now and has learned a ton. So been great.
I feel like that's how the first hire is. It's just they wind up, I mean, at a scratch agency, they wind up just becoming a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
Well, they have to.
It's inevitable.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I'd like that you explain it just because, I don't know, with the VA conversation is a whole nother podcast, and we've had those, but there's 10 different agencies and 10 different VAs inside the agencies. They're all doing something different, right? And they're all capitalizing based on that type of VA. And, I just think, just like we talk about, there's a million ways to start an agency. There's a million ways to run an agency. There's a million ways to utilize staff inside the agencies and how they can do it. So I appreciate that perspective. Jason, this was great to catch up with you here. Like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing you next week and learning more about you and hanging out. But for those who want to check us out, by the way, one thing on my notes that we never got to is the IG game is real strong with Jason. I love the videos. You got to check out his Instagram. He does some good stuff there. So make sure to check him out there. But what's a good way for people to get in touch with you in general if they want to pick your brain on something you said?
Sure. My email is jason@coverme360.net. You can find me on Instagram, on Facebook, under InsurePro VA, I think. I'll have to check that. InsurePro VA. And last thing I want to say is my VA helps with that too. He's done a lot of the editing on that.
Oh, it's incredible. See, jack of all trades right there. Love it.
Yeah.
All right, everybody.
Jack
That's
of all
another episode
trades.
of the Scratch NC podcast. Make sure to check out Jason, follow along for everything he's doing. Thank you for joining us. Do us a favor, like the show, share the show, and subscribe. And most importantly, remember to dig down deep, believe in yourself and own your own future. We'll see you next week. Take care.